Hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast. We have guest, the regular guest, the one and only, Zakir Hussain. Assalamu alaikum, Zakir bhai.
Walaikum salam, Ruhul bhai. How are you?
Yeah, so as you know, Zakir bhai is a student of history, and he's also a community activist. We're glad to have him after a few weeks. Obviously, we've actually missed a few weeks. Basically, the topic we will be discussing, as the title says, and why are the students protesting in Bangladesh? So this is the topic. It's a very uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Very important and uh, uh, very important topic for Bangladesh right now. Almost all media is talking about it. Uh, whether it be BBC or CNN, social media people, left, right, and center, are actually, discussing why these students have been protesting. So, just a bit of background. The protest, the reason the students have been protesting is because of the government job quota system, which was introduced back in 1972 by the Bangladeshi government. And in 2018, due to the students protesting in 2018, the Bangladeshi government actually they changed it. Basically they got rid of the quota system, and then in 2024, earlier this year, it was reintroduced by the High Court of Bangladesh, whereby a group of people, they were uh, descendants of the freedom fighters of Bangladesh. They actually filed a writ at the High Court, and the High Court ruled in their favor, and the quota system was reintroduced in Bangladesh, and that is the main reason why we have the protests in Bangladesh. So, as you know, like subsequently, obviously, the ruling was actually challenged, and then on the 21st of July, the appeal court, the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, did actually rule in favor of the students. So basically, it was initially it was 56%, and then so 30% was for the freedom fighters and their relatives, descendants, 10% for women, 10% for the I think the hold on, let me just so let me just clarify this. I
Okay.
Just bear with me. So 30% was for the freedom fighters and their descendants, 10% was for women, and 10% was for the district quotas, 5% to ethnic minorities, and 1% to disabled persons. And the remaining was 45%, which was reserved for the general candidates. So basically, on the 21st of July, the Supreme Court, or the Appeal Court, ruled that only 5% would go to the freedom fighters and their descendants, 93% would go to the general public, and 1% to disabled persons, and 1% to the yeah, I think yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the main gist of the protest. So Zakir bhai, I'm sure you've been following uh,
Uh-huh.
the protests in Bangladesh, like most of us. What is your take? I mean, do you think this is fair? I mean,
I think, well, there's a few things you mentioned there. Thank you for giving the background. It does really help everybody tuning into this our session here, our podcast here. I think the with the quota system, to have 30% just for the descendants of the Muktijodha, the freedom fighters, given that our Bangladesh as a country, it's a lower middle income country, I do think it's probably disproportionate to have such a big percentage to be reserved for what I would consider probably not a significant percentage of the population. So I think here the distribution is quite unfair if we do look at it. If you were to proportion things and look at it percentage wise. And I think for me, even though people are protesting, I think the police brutality is what has really shocked me, I have to say. I find that police are showing no restraint, and it seems almost as if shooting at will. Now, that in any country does not bode well. It shows that there is a lack of care, lack of value for human life. In any country where you get to a stage where people can be killed very easily and there are no accountability or follow-up accountability or no restraint, I think this is breeding ground for, if you want to call it, factionalism and descending into civil disorder. So I do think the government needs to. I know it's a tough situation, but I do think they need to get hold of how the police conduct themselves. I do feel that there needs to be a lot more restraint. And I do feel that our country of Bangladesh, I think they need to be a bit more mindful that we are on the global stage. And when other countries see this type of behavior, following on from that, you want to do commerce, you want to do trading, all of that will have an impact on the same government, which is, it seems, they are allowing this to happen. But I have to also mention that there is strong evidence of foreign interference as well. So some are saying that although what was requested by the protesters, those demands have been met. Now, to what extent, I can't say. Some are saying they have been met, others are saying it hasn't gone far enough. But if it has been met, then surely the protesters would need to stop protesting. And also, the Awami League are saying that there's foreign interference with the help of the opposition party. Now, if the protesters, for argument's sake, have managed to get what they have demanded, still protesting, then the ruling government has every right to say this was never really about quotas. That was just a pretext to cause disorder and civil disobedience. And then they might even justify the brutality of the police. So I think our Bangladeshi populace, the protesters, the general public, are in a situation whereby they have to play it quite carefully. The protests, they have to be quite targeted protests and very clear as to what's being demanded. Once those demands are met, I do think that they need to sit with the government and stop the protests. I know many will probably criticize what I have just said there, but for no country is it good to have anarchy or civil disorder, because then everyone suffers. Sometimes we get carried away with protests and we feel we've achieved something. And don't get me wrong, certain protests are good in order to get the government's attention. But a country like Bangladesh, I do think it's not just about a simple protest. It has long-lasting impact on the economy, on the lives of people, on the history of the country. So I think there's a lot of things on both sides, the government and the general public, that people need to take into consideration before further protests, and from the government side, taking such heavy-handed measures.
Yeah, I mean, students, especially in Bangladesh, I think, like most countries, students have always played a big part in shaping a country, especially in terms of Bangladesh. I'm sure you know, in 1952, during
Yeah,
the language movement, it was the students actually who came here, the Dhaka students, Dhaka University students,
yeah,
who actually led the way for the recognition of Bangla as the official language in Bangladesh. And then in 1971, it was the students again who were pivotal to the independence of Bangladesh. And then again, we see students just before the quota protest. There was a protest a few years back in Bangladesh to actually improve road safety, and they were very successful. The government had to really crack down. Basically, when they were protesting, and they were literally checking drivers' IDs just to make sure drivers had licenses, and
yeah,
they knew the law basically, and they were very successful at the time. The government did actually cooperate on that, and we saw a massive change in terms of road safety. in Bangladesh a few years back. So it's very sad. I mean, we condemn, obviously, I'm sure you and I, we condemn all sorts of violence from both sides. But like you, I do agree. I think the police could have handled the situation, much better. Yeah, they were very heavy-handed, and unfortunately, may Allah give Jannah to all the people who died, all the
Um,
protesters who died. I think the official report saying, I think that's is somewhere around 200 or above 200. There are
yeah,
different figures, basically.
yeah. Some say 100. I've read Al Jazeera. This was probably about a few days back. They're saying 147 reported. Some have said 200. So it is around the 147 to 200. The only other thing I was going to add by is some of the clips, videos that we've seen, people are not a threat to the police, and yet the police are shooting, and
Yeah.
there's clear evidence of that. And that is something that you cannot in any way justify. And I think
Mm,
it's those sort of clips, it's those sort of actions by the police
mm,
that really make one wonder um, if the police have full license to do whatever they want
mm,
under the pretext of bringing the protest or bringing people back into order. So I think it's those sort of clips that will remain in people's memories, where unarmed, non-threatening behavior from the public was met by brutal force from the police. So I
mm,
think the government of Bangladesh does really need to look into that as well. Especially, I mean, one is the moral side of things,
mm.
which is human life, and for a poor country, or sorry, middle income, lower middle income country, a developing country like Bangladesh, all of this will have an economic impact as well.
Yeah. Uh, so basically, the current government in Bangladesh, the Awami League, uh, they were the party, who were in power, sorry, who led the country to its independence, and
Mm.
they were in power from 1972 to 1975, and that was the period when they introduced the quota, and they are seen as the party for the freedom of Bangladesh, which led Bangladesh to its freedom. Um, and basically, it's very strange, isn't it? I mean, to see the very same party, uh,
Yeah,
you know, not being able to sort of manage, the student progress very well. I think it was badly managed, generally because they caught the attention of the worldwide media, the BBC and the CNN. And, as a Bangladeshi myself, I feel very sad. Very upset because we made many strides over the last sort of decade or two.
yeah,
There was many things we could be proud of. A lot of media, the World Economic Forum was praising Bangladesh for its achievements and its developments. Especially our neighbor countries like India and Pakistan, they were praising
yeah,
Bangladesh for its development. But unfortunately, after this protest, everybody's
yeah.
questioning Bangladesh and how Bangladesh is actually, managing its affairs. I agree with you. I think the government and the police, they could have handled things better. Uh, basically, so are you aware of what the new demands are from the students? The students have,
No,
they
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so basically the students now, although the quota system has been changed, through the appeal court, they are demanding, I think one of them is they want justice for the victims. That's one of the
Okay,
demands.
okay.
And are you aware of the other uh, demands?
I'm not actually, because I've seen conflicting things. So different reports say different things. So
Yeah,
it'd be good to know what you've
yeah.
read.
That's one of the major demands they are demanding. They want justice for the victims. And they want more sort of transparency, in
Do you
government
mean
sectors,
transparency of the system itself?
yeah, of the system itself, basically. So that's the two that I know of, actually. Um, so basically, I think where do you see things actually uh, going towards, like in sort of next year or two, as things stand?
I think it's very difficult. It all depends on how the government manages things. I have to say. I mean, the government needs to get to the root cause of why these protests have happened, and I think it's important that the main cause is identified. So if it is that it was a pretext from foreign interference, this was a way of just causing anarchy. That needs to be identified, that needs to be dealt with. And if it is genuine demand that people have felt that the government's not listening or government's being unfair, I do think that there needs to be a consultation process whereby, like students or student bodies, unions need to be consulted, like we have similar in this country. They need to be consulted at the policy forming stages. So this way, the views of the students or other relevant bodies, their representatives give the views of their respective organization. I think that way, students or other relevant bodies will feel that they have contributed to policy making, and the likelihood of protests happening is less. And even if protests were to happen and the students had the engagement, the other relevant bodies have had the engagement, I don't think any protests relating to these types of issues will gain any sort of traction, purely because the government did consult the student unions and others. So I think it's a very delicate balance. It could well be that government does have intentions, but the student bodies or others might not want to do that. So we have to find out what actually caused it, what is driving it. Because from the surface, it seems disgruntled students took to protest, police were heavy-handed, looks obviously bad on the government. People are angry, people have died. So I do think a lot of soul searching needs to be done. It's hard to tell what's going to happen. It all depends on how the government manages this very crucial stage. And I think the way forward is through dialogue, actually bringing and publicizing as well that the government is speaking to students or their representatives. And I do think it needs to be transparent. It cannot be just behind closed doors. If that's the case, there'll always be, you can have the best meeting, there'll always be speculations from those who seek to harm or seek to cause a imbalance within the Bangladesh government. So it has to be transparent. And I do think if they were to publicize to a certain extent these types of meetings, obviously, if there are sensitive information, they'll redact that from the meeting. There's many ways of doing that through modern technology. But I do think it's time that the government was a lot more transparent. Only then they'll gain the trust of the public and also the world media and world governments. So I think transparency is the key to achieve stability again and to take Bangladesh forward. But I do think, like yourself, that these sort of protests do take Bangladesh back 6 months or even a year of their progress.
Yeah, so basically the main, a factor behind the protest is unemployment everywhere. In Bangladesh, every year, 2.2 million come into the job sector.
Yeah.
And that is why people are demanding this is so unfair. That's the demands of the protesters, basically. Only from 2.2 million, only 200,000 people actually find jobs, right? 50% are in government sector and 50% are in the private sector. So that is why they protested.
So there you go. So that's the again tackling things like that. So I was aware of those figures. The fact that we know only 200,000 get a job, so now you've got 2 million roughly who graduated, and remember they like to have big loans and big debts because private tuition and many other things, and then not to get a job at the end of it. This is a recipe for disaster. I think again the government needs to manage how each year these students who are qualifying, how are they blended into the job market? If jobs are not there, jobs need to be created. Some solution has to be found. You cannot expect parents, students to give all their effort, spend money, spend the time, and then at the end of it, there is no jobs. And then to see 30% for the children of the freedom fighters. And then you look at the numbers of people who fall into that category and the pot that's allocated. It's not proportional. So I think, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on. I'll continue after you finish.
So I was saying it's not proportional. And as a person living in this country, if I can see that and it's glaringly obvious, then I think it's time that the government has to ask itself serious questions as to why they allow all these students to qualify, graduate, knowing that they're graduating, and only have 200,000 jobs when there should be at least 2 million.
Yeah. So I just want to correct myself. I did say 2.2 million. It's actually 22 lakhs. That's 2.2
Yes,
million, isn't it? 22 lakhs, yeah.
yes, yeah,
2.2 million, yeah. So
yeah,
basically,
2.2.
the government really needs to look at sort of, creating more jobs, inviting more investment from others. Because look, we know like a lot of multinational companies are moving out of China. They're looking for other countries. And Bangladesh could easily be one of them,
Absolutely.
like I know recently in the last year or two, a good number of companies have started moving to countries like Cambodia, Laos, India.
Yeah,
So that's where sort of Bangladesh government can step in and sort of invite, investments, whereby it will create a lot of, jobs in
absolutely,
Bangladesh, So that's one area I think the government really needs to work on, because
absolutely. And
uh,
I'm yeah, sorry.
this will actually continue, like I think the unemployment is so high in Bangladesh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
And to be fair on the government, the government do provide subsidies for agricultural businesses, yeah. So if somebody was to sort of start a farm, or a fishery, they do provide interest-free loans, you know
yeah.
so that's one way
No,
of
they,
tackling unemployment, or any sort of agricultural related business. If you were to sort of start one, the
yeah.
government does provide interest-free loans, which is something better than nothing. Not many countries
Yeah, I
have
think
to do that.
I think if they could diversify a bit more, so yes, through agriculture they are subsidizing,
Mm,
but I do think maybe other types of jobs or industries, they
mm,
may look to at least do some sort of subsidy. So otherwise, what would happen is due to the subsidies, the most of the people will concentrate their efforts on just on farming, but then you've got a whole country to run. There's many
mm,
other jobs that need to be filled. So
mm,
it is a very tight. How can I say? Very It's a difficult balance. It
mm,
is a very difficult balance, and purely because the situation that Bangladesh is in as well. When you get natural disasters, it sets the country back. So it's got those sort of issues as well. And I think generally the political climate of Bangladesh has never really been steady to the point that people can feel comfortable with any government. I'm not
mm,
saying our Minigo, I'm not saying being, just saying just in general. I think since its inception, it's had quiet years, but I don't think that people ever felt totally at peace. Other than I think from what I have spoken to people, the time where you had the caretaker government, people felt a bit safe.
yeah.
So I think it shows that Bangladesh can do it, albeit it was a caretaker government. But I think it's a case of learning from the caretaker government. What did they do so
Mm,
right that people felt safe? I remember
mm,
friends and family members coming back. I think it was 2006, 2007, around that time, coming back to me. I was so safe. You can,
mm.
go here and there, and got, police or military, and they felt very safe. So it can be done. It has been proven in Bangladesh it can be done. So I think there's something for the government of today to learn from the caretaker government, how they manage things.
But obviously we can't have a caretaker government,
Absolutely, I'm not
permanently,
saying that.
And
I
that was a
think
temporary
learning, yeah,
fix in Bangladesh, and
yeah.
that was very unique. Only Bangladesh and Pakistan have caretaker governments, in the past. Yeah, but
But I
obviously
think, yeah,
Bangladesh got rid of the caretaker government because, like back in the 1990s, I think there was a writ at the courts, and the courts said like the government's. Like successive government can only have 3 or 4 caretaker governments, and then after that they have to change it. So currently, the current government actually changed that, through
okay,
the courts. So basically, Bangladesh cannot, like, constitutionally, they cannot have a caretaker government, unless
yeah, I think,
something severe
yeah.
happens. So that is
That,
where we are.
yeah, I think
Um,
the point I was trying to make is that obviously you cannot have a caretaker government for too long. But I think the lessons that we can learn from that brief
Oh
time where
yes,
the caretaker,
100%,
yeah. So
hundred
that's what
percent.
I'm
I
saying.
agree.
I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, I'm not in favor of having temporary fix like a caretaker government. I
Mm,
think knowing that people felt safe,
mm,
what made people feel safe?
mm.
Because without safety, you can't really enjoy life. So I think that's something at the moment. I don't think that people in Bangladesh feel safe. to protest or just in general because of the
mm,
climate
mm,
that has been created in Bangladesh. So I think there are a lot of lessons that need to be learned. The government needs to be open to criticism,
mm,
and this is another thing as well. I think just in general, it's not just Bangladesh, but I think many countries in similar sort of economic, if you want to call it, level, um, they don't always take kindly to criticism.
mm,
Criticism doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just, if it's constructive criticism, it can be good for the country as well. So I do think the government just needs to open up a bit more, be a bit more patient,
mm,
and the police have to be reined in because you cannot have
mm,
those sort of images where unarmed, non-threatening, no danger at all, and the person's getting shot,
mm.
sometimes fatal. That's inexcusable.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I suppose, a very delicate situation for the government. They have to play it well, or else I think a lot of people, even their supporters, will start to question them. I've spoken to
Absolutely.
good numbers the current government supporters, and they're not happy how the government actually handled the whole situation.
Yeah.
Because the country, like most democratic countries, the country was founded on democracy, and
Yeah.
the ethos that was founded on. A lot of it is actually missing. A lot of
Yeah.
people feel that, like you said, that during the caretaker government, people not just felt safe, there was law and order. You
Order.
know, everything
Yeah.
functioned very well.
Yes.
Everything. So maybe we need to sort of revisit and see where the weaknesses are and maybe try and improve because Bangladesh is,
Absolutely.
as both of us know, we are very revolutionary.
Absolutely.
We will not actually, the people of Bengalis generally, they will not tolerate any sort of dictatorship or any sort of forced, action.
Absolutely. Impositions.
Um,
Yeah.
they've
Impositions.
always
They wouldn't.
revolted, but Bangladeshis and Bengalis generally, if you look at the
Yeah.
history during the British period,
The British
they
only
were,
know too well.
yeah, yeah. It was the Bengalis who were at the forefront, revolting against injustices. During the Pakistani era, it was again the Bangladeshis, So obviously, personally, I'm sure both of us would like to see a very uh, forthcoming, very developed, a country
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely. That's
Bangladesh,
what I want.
like obviously, like even after all the troubles, no country is perfect, no government is perfect, yeah. But after everything that the government has done, at least there were certain things we can be proud of, like in terms of like development, like Bangladesh became lower middle income country,
Yeah.
a few years back. Bangladesh is the second largest garments exporter after China. Bangladesh is the third largest exporter of fish products. But then again, I think being Bengalis ourselves, I think end of the day we prefer fairness, justice, and democracy
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
prevail over any other um, uh, rule. And obviously people expect a lot more from the current government because they're the current party, which is the Awami League. They were the party who actually fought for independence. They gave
Absolutely.
leadership. So I think that's one of the sort of um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Expectation people have. People expect so much from the government, you see, and but like like I think no government could actually deliver everything on the manifesto,
No,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think
So
I,
even if some government if they can deliver at least 60 to 70%, I think that's you could
I
say
think
that's a very good record, you know.
I think I think also I
Um,
think the current government needs to understand that the this particular government and the brand, which is our League, was seen as the revolutionary party, the independence party, the
mm,
party that brought Bangladesh into existence. Awami League, Awam meaning the average, common man, the
yeah,
general public. Now, if that same general public is not finding itself safe
mm,
from the very government that liberated it, then it's like a contrast, a contradiction, isn't there?
mm, exactly.
So, I think although the government might say, well, we try our best to live up to that name, but it's difficult to do so. But they need to also remember that the public will judge them based on the history, and the history is quite a tough one to live up to, because back then a lot of the people who were part of that party gave up their lives, gave up their wealth, many sacrifices they made. So there is an impression in people's minds that this party is meant to work for the people, and it shouldn't be killing the people. So the nuances, or things like the foreign interference and many other things that play a part, the average public doesn't know that. So they're not going to judge you on what's happening behind the scenes and why you're taking a certain action. And even if you were to explain to the people, not everyone's going to understand it. Bearing all of that in mind, it's the government's duty to make sure it communicates in a way where it gets the message across without alienating anybody, without causing further bloodshed. So it's a tough balance, no doubt, but that's what the government's job is there to do. You try and find solutions where there are seemingly no solutions. That's why we hope that our best brains who are in the parliament can work things out. That's what we hope for. So,
I think we see problems in this country. We see people protesting in the UK, and then a lot of the times, government talks to the people who are protesting, and they come to a solution. Not just in this country. I think most countries, they find a solution. It doesn't get too violent.
Yes.
But I think some of the stuff that went on, like for example, the curfew didn't go down well.
No.
So it portrayed Bangladesh as a really, really,
Yeah, I mean,
in a
soon as you
negative
impose
way.
curfew,
And also the internet shutdown. Like people are comparing Bangladesh to Kashmir now. Are we like Kashmir? People are questioning these things on social media.
Absolutely. The
So
blackout, I think, was for about 11 days.
yeah, even now today, internet isn't really like only the offices have the internet. Most average people don't have the internet. So I think the government really needs to sort of take action, drastic
I
action,
agree.
quick action in terms of reinstating the internet, because the whole economy, during the first 5 days of the shutdown, the internet shutdown, Bangladesh actually lost 1.2 billion.
There you go.
In
That's
terms
for
can
a
you
country like
imagine?
Bangladesh, it's huge. It's
Exactly.
huge.
Yeah. And obviously, foreign reserves, it's a few years back, we did have very high foreign reserve, but recently, it came down. So we need
Yeah.
to sort of, we have to be very careful, like because nowadays the economy, especially Bangladesh economy, is actually heading towards or gearing towards a IT centered economy. Like
Yeah.
the government keeps talking about smart Bangladesh. They were for the last 10 years they were saying like we want to create a digital Bangladesh, but now the phrase they use is like they want to create a smart Bangladesh. So as you can imagine, not just in Bangladesh, I think most countries rely on in the internet. If you shut down the
Of course.
internet, you shut down the economy basically. So 5 days of shutdown costed Bangladesh. I saw in one of the media reports, it costed Bangladesh 1.3 billion. So can you imagine?
That's severe.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money
yeah.
for Bangladesh. And I think
So,
this is it. If from what I've heard, the government prides itself on the strides that it's taken in development. Similarly, when you take power, you cause a power outage
mm,
and take internet away, you are, sometimes it can be perceived as lost control, or the only way you can manage things is by taking very drastic measures. And that does not feel or sound, uh, to be a government which is in control of itself. So there's many things psychologically damaging about the way the government has handled. I'm not saying that another option would have been a better option. Either option, I think, I do feel they had few options that they could have looked at, but straight away going for brutality and power outage, it just shows that it's the easiest thing to do. Click the button, and it requires no dialogue. It's just I think it shows the government to be weak when it comes to talking points or justifying or having dialogue.
Yeah, even like
So I think things
I'm
will be
sure
ready.
you've seen media coverage like our neighboring countries, the students actually joined in uh, uh, to support. They were protesting in neighboring countries like India and Pakistan. They were saying, no, what is it with the Bangladeshi students? They have so much courage and guts and so much
Yes.
drive to go out and demand all these things. You don't see this generally in many countries. So
But
uh,
that's the spirit of Bangladesh is through and through. Bengalis, people from Calcutta, that area, what we consider Bengal, it's something that has always been in our blood. Revolutions, when we're not happy with something, people are willing to lay down their lives at times. So yeah, it's I'm glad that others are feeling inspired by it. But I do think maybe with all the passion, we just need to curtail it to the point that we get the message across without, losing too many lives, or without losing any lives would be better. So yes, obviously it's ignited passion in other students around the world. But I think when we come back to Bangladesh, that passion needs to be measured as well because it has very dire consequences.
yeah. Um, I mean, obviously, if you compare Bangladesh with the other developing nations in that part of the world, you see, one thing we can be proud of is like Bangladesh are really good at like demanding, you know,
Yeah.
things from the government. You don't see these things like in other
And
countries.
they succeed as well. They're quite
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, and whereas here, like in the UK, for example, like especially with the young generation, you don't really see them like engaging in politics, or demanding stuff. Uh, maybe they,
They're kept,
or,
they,
they see like politics as broken. They see politics as broken, and yes, especially in the UK, my personal experience is like when you talk to young people, they say like they don't see any improvement.
yeah.
The
True. I have seen similar.
anything like even infrastructure. Whereas if you like look at even Bangladesh, they see new bridges being built, new tunnels being built, new airports being built. But here, nothing is being built. So that is why that's the difference. I just want to compare.
They can't see it. Tangible,
Yeah,
tangible improvements. They can't see it. A
exactly.
lot of it's just rhetoric. A lot of it's just, talking about policies.
Yeah.
It's refining things that already exist. Whereas again, the challenges of this country and challenges of Bangladesh is very
Yeah.
different. Bangladesh is a
Anyway,
developed.
Zakir bhai, we have to wrap up. We've got less than 1 minute. So
Okay,
once again, thank you very much for actually coming and discussing about the protest and final thoughts from you. 30 seconds.
I would just say, yeah, all praise for the Bangladeshi people. I hope the Bangladeshi government and the people can sit together, have a dialogue, and be able to come to some resolution. From both sides, I think there needs to be restraint. And yeah, I hope that these protests don't escalate anymore and the resolution is sought very, very soon.
Thank you, Zakir bhai. And until the next episode, those of you have watched this program, please do consider following, subscribing, and liking the channel. This goes a long way for me. It gives me motivation to carry on. Thank you once again, and until the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.